Hello everyone, Zendero Gaming coming at y'all with another video, and in today's video we are going to go over the results from this past weekend's Dallas Regional. The top 32 listings have been out there, and I'm sure you've already seen a lot of videos going over these deck listings. I was trying to give it a little bit of time for this whole tournament to kind of come together, all the deck list profiles to be put on all the sites. I am going to be using exburst.dev. If you do not use this site, please use this site. It is amazing. You can post a lot of your local game store tournaments on here, and as well as these big tournaments coming up on here. So big shout out to everyone in the community who helped get these results put on the page, and I'm going to give you guys my take. We're just going to review the top 32, what the pie chart looked like, all that. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it in this video. I kind of really want to do the aftermath of this, right? I want to do a state of the meta report. I want to look at how we predicted the meta to be on our last tier list video, as well as just the last pie chart from local gameplay tournament results, and see how that translated into this big tournament, right? And I think you'll be very surprised with the similarities of it, because if you are someone who is in the community and you do play in a lot of these online tournaments, then the results of this previous weekend's regionals should be no surprise to you about all the decks that did really well. But getting into it, this is going to be the part we're going to be a little bit faster over, because I know you guys have already seen this, hopefully. This is the top 32 deck listings. We did have a Lancelot get first place, which is really cool. In second place, a blue Full Metal Alchemist Roy Mustang. Third place, another Suzaku. Fourth place, which is a surprise probably to a lot of people, not me, because I really believe in the green Bleach deck, coming into fourth place. In fifth place is a purple Toto deck. Everyone loves Toto, and I've been on Toto even since before it has gotten that upgrade, which I've really believed in this deck, and I'm super happy to see this deck doing very well, because it is just so much fun to play as well. Sixth place, a purple Bleach player. Seventh place is going to be green One Punch Man, which is really cool to see on here. Eighth place going to be your blue JJK deck. Ninth place going to be a yellow One Punch Man. Another Toto coming up in 10th place, another Roy Mustang. In 11th place, in 12th place, another purple Toto. In 13th, purple Bleach. 14th, another Roy Mustang deck. 15th blue JJK deck. 16th green One Punch Man. 17th purple Bleach. 18th, one thing to note on here is the first topping list for a purple Code Geass deck, showing I think that a lot of people are off this deck. I think that it has a couple of tough matchups, but it does not take away from the power of this deck, because it is still such a strong deck that you need to watch out for. 19th place, blue JJK. 20th place, blue Roy Mustang again. 21st place, coming up into our first Black Clover Red Asta deck. Now, we will be getting that card in as the promos, and I will foresee that this deck will start doing better once we get that double energy Asta. I think that that helps the deck out a lot. So awesome to see someone bringing up a 21st place here. 22nd place, another purple Bleach. 23rd, our first yellow Espers deck. 24th, our first Integrity Knights Sword Art Online deck. I believe in both of those decks really well, so I'm happy to see someone do really well on here. 25th place, another green Code Geass. 26th, Toto. 27th, Roy Mustang. 28th, Suzaku again. 29th, blue JJK. 30th, another Esper deck. 31st, purple Bleach, and in 32nd, another Roy Mustang deck. One thing to note, that big shout out to these Esper sister decks, because playing through a big tournament like this and still managing to get top 32 in a deck that does require a lot out of you to play, I think is a big shout out to both of these players, to 23rd, 30th. They didn't put the names on there, but big shout out to you if you played the Espers, because that is a bit long day for you to take this deck, trying to go X2 in these tournaments, and seeing that people were able to do it just shows the power of these decks if you're willing to do it. I did want to go through and give you guys that, so that way we can then look at the pie chart here and then see in the top 32 the most represented deck was of course still Roy Mustang, which is no surprise to a lot of people, getting 6 tops. And then in second place, purple Bleach getting 5 tops. Fourth place, purple JJK decks, the Toto decks. I guess it's like a three-way tie for fourth place, right? Because we have 4 copies of each of Toto, green Code Geass, Suzaku, and blue JJK all taking in third place at fourth. And then yellow One Punch Man taking up 3 spots. I do wonder if that includes the Esper sisters on that. I think it does, right? 1, 2, 3. So they are considering this the Esper Sisters as well. If you want to be very technical, only one of these is a yellow One Punch Man straight Saitama deck list. The other 2 are Esper Sister decks, kind of hybrids. And then 2 green One Punch Man decks making the top on here. One thing to note, I think any meta that shows up with obviously the big winner here is Suzaku. Coming in, getting, you know, out of the top 16 if we really wanted to take that down. Getting, you know, 2 tops, one of them winning the event and the other one getting 3rd place, being a, you know, big standout for a lot of people. And then a green One Punch Man Saitama sneaking into 7th place, being one of those other original deck lists, or 2 of them being in the top 16. Original deck list on there too. So one thing to note, very cool there to see these decks performing well. But I think any meta that has, you know, a build them up kind of style, which is going to be Suzaku, right? I think there leaves room for One Punch Man to also come in as that second kind of tier of build 'em up deck, get to your stuff, and maybe just not as consistent or as powerful as Suzaku is at closing out games. But one thing to note is like the Suzakus are on the top end, right? Like high end of the top end for Suzakus, with the top 2 having to come down to 25th and 28th for the other 2 copies, showing that, you know, granted, I know the person who won, and I think the person in 3rd place only played 1 Toto matchup, and I'm almost positive, it's hard to keep up with all these things, but I'm almost certain that the 1st place person, one of these players never played a Toto matchup, which is very, very important for Suzaku, because I do think Suzaku loses pretty hard to Totos, and for both of them not having to see that matchup a ton throughout the day. And one thing to note, I'd be remiss to not say it, is that the, you know, Toshiro player did just straight up brick, if you watch the stream or were covering the tournament, in that matchup too. And I do think that Toshiro has a pretty solid matchup when you are able to tap down their energy line in this matchup as well. But still, shout outs to all the players who perform well. I'm not trying to take anything away from anyone, but I am trying to give a little bit more of a context to how these matchups played in through. And I think that these Code Geass players, you know, getting to dodge some of the Toto matchups and the Fushiguro not having to match up against that as well, gave them a little bit better odds. And sometimes, like, you do play well and then your matchups do matter a lot, but at the end of the day, when it's your day to win, you are winning. And, you know, big shout outs to everyone that's on here. I did want to make a note of that just to be absolutely clear, right? So we see those deck lists. I do want to come to our tier list that we did. You know, this is probably, I think, like a month old at the moment. So for us to, you know, be on here and try to see what these decks look like, right? The best decks in the format, we obviously, the top 3 decks, not hard to pick out there when we did the deck list on here. You know, blue JJK, blue Full Metal Alchemist, the green Suzaku. I was trying to tell everyone, definitely the best deck in the format, if not one of the best decks. I think that it does have a great counterplay into, right? Like you can see like Toto and these other decks doing really, really well. I'm definitely missing on the purple Code Geass. I think that the purple Code Geass matchup is just, you really have to hope to hit that purple Code Geass, the Gawain raid in your life, and on turns like that, you really can just demolish your opponent. I do think that, you know, some of these other decks, you know, it just didn't get enough support in the second set. Now you did get the 2-drop. I've seen a lot of lists not running that. Really, the deck has not been updated. Even with that Code Geass Volume 2 set, it really didn't do a ton for the deck, and I think that that is what put the deck down a little bit on here. But one still did get into the top, and I'm happy to see that. Purple Bleach doing well, no surprises there. Blue JJK, I kept the Nanami, Blue JJK, same thing. Up here, Toto doing well. And I guess some of the decks that missed out on it that I thought would be some of these topping decks is going to be Blue Sword Art Online and Tanjiro not getting a top in the top 32 here, which is very, very surprising. To not see at least one get on here. I think that both of these decks can absolutely rush down Suzaku in those particular matchups. So you just have to hope that you probably see the Suzakus early in these formats of the tournaments. And if not, then some of the other control decks probably just control you out. And I do think that that is very matchup dependent on if you get to see these. I don't think that these are not bad decks. I think they still can top in tournaments. We just didn't see it in this one. I think it has to do with the meta and just a lot of newer cards, right? Like each of these sets have not had a lot of cards touch up on them, whereas all of these cards have had newer cards added into their decks, you know, at an earlier time or most recent time than these do. And then we did see the 1 red Asta sneak in, which was awesome to see here. On our top 16, you know, one big negative that we did not see is blue bleach, and I have to add that onto a further part in this video that we're going to get to. I forgot to do that, but they did not show up at all in the top 32, which is a little surprising. We saw the Saitama show up. No 3 ladies in red show up. We saw the Fushiguro show up. A big disappointment for me as well is going to be the blue Kogias deck not getting in there. We've seen yellow, you know, sort of online get a top, not that particular deck, but those did do very well. And we saw early on in the tournament, there was a couple of these yellow SAO decks that were like 3-0 early on. We saw Espers do well, and we saw the One Punch Man Saitama sneak in there as well. So a little disappointing still. I think a lot of people are just not playing the green Kogia sort of, or sorry, the green sort of online deck because they just know that it's going to be better later, so no one really played it. You know, a big disappointment is going to be a lot of the Full Metal Alchemist and Attack on Titans decks just not showing up in these tournaments, and a lot of those I think are solid decks that people just didn't want to play. And that is a lot of these decks I have on here. And obviously my boy Kurapika did not make it on there. But overall, I think for a top 32 at a big tournament, just making sure that all of these best decks and formats did perform really well. Outside of what I thought would do well is, you know, blue SAO and Tanjiro Nezuko not doing well. But Union Arena does have a recency bias when it comes to what decks are getting played. And I do not think that that means that these decks can't do well. Alright, with that being said, we are trying to compare this pie chart here with the pie chart that we had from our recent, you know, video I did on the tournament results. I was going to do a whole nother video, but then I think that that would have just, it ended up being close to the same thing, and I wanted to take the Bandai Cardgame Fest in relation to this, and it ends up being verbatim what people are playing, right? From our last pie chart that we did, this is, you know, Full Metal Alchemist Roy Mustang, Suzaku, Blue JJK, and Purple Bleach being the top 4 decks that we saw in our last video that we did, and those are 4 of the top decks on here as well. So not really anything that we didn't think that we were going to see, right? I guess if there was, you know, one standout, Toto doing a lot better, I guess. Yeah, Suzaku, Blue JJK, Purple Bleach, and Full Metal Alchemist. And I think that the reason Toto probably doing a lot better at this big tournament is because a lot of people knew that they would be seeing Suzaku matchups, and I do think that that explains why Toto had a big showing in the top 32 percentage in these tournaments, right? A couple of the other decks that snuck into tops in our locals that haven't come up on here. Red, Ashford Academy being a deck that people were trying, but I do think that it has a hard time with a lot of control matchups, which is like the, you know, you got Suzaku is probably the strongest. Like if they high roll, they see everything, they just beat every deck. And then it's filled with a lot of control aspects with the Blue JJK, the Roy Mustang, the Purple Bleach, and the Totos. And I think that Ashford Academy just has a hard time trying to find those matchups. So I think the community, you know, is probably missing out on that one a little bit, not getting in here. Obviously, none of the Full Metal Alchemist decks really doing well into these big tournaments. I think it's because a lot of the Full Metal Alchemist decks do require very strong pilots and to see a lot of things. And I think throughout a long tournament, more and more arrows come up and more chances to break in a combo deck. Purple Kogias, we did see it get one of the tops, so I think that that is good enough. This is going to be one of those fringe top of the tier-ish decks. I still think that it's a very powerful deck because this does really well into just about every matchup, but it does lose a little consistency from these other decks like the Roy, the Blue JJK, and the Purple Bleaches, having a lot more better newer support that just helps them be a little bit more consistent and able to control and, you know, just play through Purple Code matchups a little bit more. But I don't think that this deck is going anywhere. It will still be one of the best decks, and I think it will keep sneaking in tops. And then we have a long list of all these other decks that were on here that did not make it into here. We did see the yellow SAO decks doing pretty well, which is awesome to see. No blue bleaches doing well. No blue Sword Art Online. None of the Attack on Titans deck doing well at all. But we could see in the local tournaments before this, they did well because it's a recency thing. But I just think a lot of people didn't think they would do well. But we did see the green One Punch Man Saitama and yellow One Punch Man decks doing decently well in these toppings for the 32 at least, not so much I guess the top 16. But with that being said, let's go on to the good and the bad. What is going on, right? I like to do this for a lot of sets that come out and just a lot of other things just to give us some really cool content to have fun with. So what is the thumbs up? That means that's what I think is happening good, and the thumbs down are the things that are bad. So triple thumbs up to the green golden boy Suzaku himself. Big show out here. I think that this deck just got so much support that it really didn't need in the first place. I know that I'm using this Suzaku, it's just the newest one. Some people don't even include this Suzaku in the list, to be completely honest. I just put this one on here because it was the newest one. But the deck is so consistent. It saw more draw and trash cards with the 0 drop. It saw another low drop that lets them generate extra energy. And it's just so consistent now, and it's probably the most consistent build 'em up deck. And when you have a deck with a ceiling like this that's super consistent, there is no surprise why it did so many toppings and it won the event, because it's super consistent and its ceiling is very, very high, which makes it a very, very powerful deck. But I don't think it's an unbeatable deck, right? With 2 thumbs ups are the disruption in a meta needing energy is still so good, right? I think that Toto, Purple Bleach, Roy Mustang, all these decks that are very good controller decks while pushing their state of the game with multiple raid targets are really, really strong still. And I think we have a very healthy meta at the moment with these top, 4 to 8 decks that can all kind of match up into each other well. But I do think the Suzaku is just so consistent. And the more that control decks, can learn to play against the Suzaku as well, I think they'll have a better time. I think that the matchup, if you just ask me myself, you don't kill the 6 drop. You try to block it when you can, it doesn't have impact, but you don't kill the 6 drop, and I saw in a lot of matchups, people were killing that and wasting their kill spells on the 6 drop. When I don't think that that's the right answer, because this is just my opinion, right? But you give them back the Suzaku to their hand, and I saw a lot of people killing that 6 drop, and I know that it does suck to take the 2 damage or lose a body, but you would rather do that, I think, than give them back the Suzaku that's going to let them draw a card and then be able to raid and fix their energy again. So I think that if you ask me or a couple other people I talked to about these matchups, don't kill the 6 drop and let them get the Suzaku back in. Let them get the damage in, or just trade a chunk blocker into it if you have to. And I think that is a good tip going forward for a lot of you guys if y'all want to take it. But the Green Golden Boy, obviously the star of the show, winning it and getting 2 tops in the top 4, but not ruining the whole meta, right? Like it didn't ruin anything. I think the hit meta is really, really healthy. I think the disruption in a meta that still needs energy is so strong and so good, which is where you want to be, right? Like high ceiling decks, control decks, rush decks, and really rush decks are what we're not seeing do that well. And I think it's just because people would rather run something that is more consistent and can just, have multiple raid bodies that are also counting as kill spells, which is what each of these bodies kind of do. For 1 thumbs up, I think that more decks represented in the top 32 is better than ever, which is absolutely true. We have not seen a tournament be this diverse, and it means that they're doing such a great job with this game for us in the North American format, and we can't be anything happier than that. But with the good, there is some bad, right? 3 thumbs downs for the Attack on Titan players. Where are y'all at? So many people were playing these decks in the local meta scene on online tournaments and stuff before this tournament, and I think that they just decided that they'd rather go with things they know a little bit more about than to really try to work on these decks, because I do think that the Red Eren Jaeger Attack on Titan deck, it plays very similar as Suzaku does, but maybe even a little bit more aggressive. So if you're thinking about playing a deck like Suzaku, then if you want something that's maybe a little bit more aggressive, you can play the Eren Jaeger Attack on Titan deck. But I think that since, Suzaku does have a little bit more support, being 2 volumes now, I think a lot of people who have probably wanted to play Attack on Titan just didn't want to do it, and they decided to take Suzaku anyways. But that was one deck that I was thinking probably would do really well, and you can probably play this deck now. If a lot of decks are, trying to play against Suzaku, this deck does some similar things. Levi, I think I can understand why a lot of people wouldn't take Levi to a tournament. Very inconsistent, does have a high ceiling, and we're not seeing these very aggro multi-attacker decks doing very well at the moment, because they do take more skill to pilot in bigger tournaments. As much as I love all these decks that are some of the best decks, they are easier to pilot. There's not a lot to think about outside of, Toto, what do you switch? Ichigo, when do you use your kills? Same thing with Roy. Like, you're kind of not having to think about what your deck is having to get through, but it's like when you use your cards to get rid of their things, which is a lot more simple than trying to manage your energy with Levi and when to do your combo and when not to do it, and when you can get your board clear and mess up your energies a little bit more. And to be completely honest, the biggest surprise I thought was Historia. This is the multiple 3 stars down. If I had to really do it, these 2 in the 2 thumbs downs kind of tier, because maybe I would have saw people playing this, but I thought that people would be all over Historia in a big tournament like this. This deck is so consistent and so low to the ground. It is a very premier, like, you always do what you're going to do in Historia, and maybe just the issue with, you know, I think that she doesn't have a great way to get over the Suzaku 5k bodies, and that is maybe what, you know, a lot of people thought going into the tournament. If we're going to see a lot of Suzakus, I don't have a lot of ways to take care of the big Suzaku bodies, so why would I play Historia? But for me, the biggest disappointment overall in the tournament is that there wasn't a single person making it into the top 32 with Historia, because this deck is the epitome of consistency. It doesn't have a crazy high ceiling unless you do get all those options in there early to get the impact and double attacker on your other raid target, but I am very, very disappointed in no Historia's topping, and I do hope that these Attack on Titan players see this video making, and they decide to be like, you know what, I'm gonna prove you know, him wrong. I'll start representing my Historia, and I really do wish people would. And to round out on the negative, I do got one thumbs down for the Code Geass decks. The purple and the blue Code Geass decks, I think that they do have some semi-rough matchups in the meta at the moment. Because, you know, with the way Vincent works, if you do tap down any of the top decks characters, well, if you're not picking their raid character that they cannot raid on top of, then they can just raid over that card, stand it back up, and your effect doesn't matter. But I do think that on some of the lower tier decks, this deck can really shut them down. So I'm a little disappointed to not see at least one blue Code Geass deck get into a top. We obviously saw one purple Code Geass top, but I am a little disappointed not to see more of that. And I think it's just because even before Suzaku got the support, I've always found the matchup of the purple Code Geass to the green Code Geass to be a little wishy-washy, and whoever just sees their cards a little bit more consistent and better just wins the game. I've done a lot of playtesting with one of my buddies with these two decks, and it really just feels like whichever deck just sees the best hand does win. And I think a lot of people were just willing to take, you know, if I'm going to play one of these two decks, I'd rather play the deck that gives me a higher ceiling to win against some of the decks that can put out bigger bodies, as opposed to the deck that kind of beats up lower decks better, right? I do think that purple Code Geass does beat up all the kind of like tier 1 to 2 decks a lot more consistent probably than Suzaku does, because, you know, a flat minus 1000 body across the board is a little more generic against a lot more matchups as Suzaku is. But at the end of the day, when you're just blowing up people's characters and swinging in for 2 damage on multiple bodies is really, really insane. So I am, you know, being a, you know, Code Geass being my second favorite decks to play in the game, a little disappointed that more people didn't perform well with them. And obviously, if I had to, like, I didn't expect Kurapika to get a top. Obviously, I did put him as one of the top decks, but I am disappointed to not see anyone represent my besto boyo in Kurapika. But going forward, I know that this is, my videos always get longer than I want them to be, but I have a lot to say, which I hope you guys appreciate. But the last points I want to talk on is, you know, after this big tournament, we do have Rurouni Kenshin out now, and we do have Hunter x Hunter Volume 2. So what kind of impact will Kenshin and Hunter x Hunter Volume 2 have on the metagame? Well, spoilers if you don't know, Kenshin is absolutely insane. The red Kenshin deck is going to be one of the top 5 decks in the format. I did these kind of in order, like Kenshin over here on this side, if you want to know what I'm trying to do with the graphics here in my theme. I was trying to show that Kenshin is definitely the best deck from this, you know, set. And I do think in kind of second place is going to be the Kenshin Seijiru deck and the Hajime Saito deck, kind of bringing up the second tier of the decks. And then the other 3 decks are all pretty solid in their own aspects. They all do very unique things. If I had to say, if I put one above these down here, it'd probably be the Sanosuke deck, because it plays similar to Suzaku, right? And if you like decks like that, Sanosuke kind of gives you a very similar feel, being able to offer some damage 2 and impact 1, but probably with a little bit lower of a energy line, not having to get to 6 or 8 energy. So if you're looking for a deck like that, definitely pick up Sanosuke. But I do think that the other 2 decks are a little bit harder to pilot, but do have some legs to stand on. But the star of the show is definitely Kenshin. This red Kenshin deck is absolutely insane, and if you haven't built the deck yet, then good luck, because the SRs, there's not any for sale online, because everyone wants to build this deck, because this deck is going to bring down the Suzaku matchup big time. I think that Suzaku will lose to Kenshin really, really hard, and that's going to make the next metagame at a big tournament very, very interesting, because Kenshin has a great matchup into Suzaku. You can really mess up their energy line. I do think there's some lines of play where you just don't block the Kenshin, let them get their damage in, you keep your big bodies, you answer the Kenshin board, and that is already the play testing that I've seen. That is what you do, so that is a winnable matchup, but I do still think that it's favoring Kenshin because they're so low to the ground. If they do get the double attacking Kenshin down early before you're able to get that 6-drop mech down, you are just going to be down 3 or 4 life before you're able to get these 5Ks on the board, and then you will have to answer your opponent because I think the Kenshin players are going to keep running the BP boosting card that lets your Kenshin go up 1,000. Now you're not able to get the free block in the 5K, but I do think that Kenshin is easily a top 10 deck in the format, so it will have a humongous impact on what the metagame is going to be. And I do think that, you know, Seijiru and Hajime Saito, these two decks will probably be, you know, some rogue tier decks that you do have to look out for, because being able to snipe from the backline is so fun, so cool. Very unique play style, very, very interesting deck. If you want to take a deck to really master and get cool with and do some really interesting plays, I think that Hajime Saito is a good deck for you. And if you just like really strong cards, really Chad characters, then the, you know, Master and Disciple deck with Kenshin and Seijiru himself, his master, is a really cool, fun deck. And outside of the Kenshin deck, it's my favorite deck. Like, to be very completely honest, this is my favorite deck. I do think the Kenshin deck is just better, so probably be the one I play a little bit more. But this blue deck here is a lot of fun, and it's just very, very thematic. And a lot of the Kenshin decks are just super thematic in general. But I think that Kenshin will have a humongous impact on the meta. Very, very huge impact. Huge impact. Just to state it. Very clearly to state it there, it will have a humongous impact. Can I get this to go away now? Oh no, I might have messed it up. Go away. There we go. Huge impact. But where does that leave Hunter x Hunter Volume 2, right? I think that this will have a decently, you know, not a huge impact, but it will impact the meta in some aspects. So a minor impact. I'll say minor impact here because these decks were already not very strong. I do think that every deck got a little bit of support. I think if I had to pick one winner, it will be the purple decks. I know one of my buddies who did a lot of playtesting this weekend with his Phantom Troop deck isn't feeling very good about it, but the key with these purple decks is it takes a lot of practice finding your lineups into other metas and like just how well they can do. And my favorite deck from this is obviously Kurapika, but for the purple decks, it's the Zoldyck family deck. If you're looking for a cool deck to play, I am very high on the Zoldyck family deck. I don't think it's going to be very popular, so I don't think it's going to be seeing a lot of tops. I do think that if someone wants to take the time to build this deck, I'll do a big deck profile playthrough video on it because I love this deck. But it is really, really strong. I think the issue with this deck is they gave us a color trigger Illumi that did not need to be a color trigger, because we already had an amazing color trigger Illumi, and it kind of just hurt the deck in that sense. That Illumi could have just been an active, a get, a draw, anything else, and the Zoldyck family deck would have been insane with how many Illumis you could get down on the board and raid into this Illumi and keep getting it back to your hand, because they do have a purple card that lets you add this card back to your hand. So you could just keep putting a 4K damage 2 on your opponent that if they block, you get to draw cards multiple times. Like 6 instances of playing this Illumi is insane. And I think that Illumi does have a great spot in the meta of the Zoldyck family deck, along with the Phantom Troop, but you do have to do a lot of deck testing with it to find a great spot for it. Along the lines of trying to find some great deck profile builds, I do think that Green, Gone, and Friends, this new color trigger Gone is really, really strong. He is really good. It's another kill spell. I think it just absolutely replaces the other color trigger Gone, which kind of gives you a lower to the ground deck now. And I think that I will be practicing a lot of my Hunter x Hunter decks going forward to try to help give you guys some good deck profiles and what I think they'll happen for them. You have every tool at your disposal now with this Green Gone deck and Friends. And now if you want to take this deck, figure out a good build with it, I think you'll have a really, really good time with this deck. Same long lines of probably if I had to pick one of the newer decks to come up that might be, you know, really, really strong even above these, is this new yellow Hunter x Hunter deck, the Razor Attack Team deck. It's very hard to build, but a lot of the cards are really, really strong. Any deck that has a 4-drop that has the potential to get impact 5K, this Gone makes the deck like, he is a 4-drop that as long as you have a Killua on the same line, every turn you attack, he goes up to 5K impact. And I think that people are sleeping on this deck because it is a little hard to build because the Hisokas cost a lot. And to get Hisoka and Gon on your turn, this guy, if you have them both on the same line, this Gon is a 6k blocker body. And I think that this deck is statted out the wazoo. I'm going to be working on this deck too. I love all my Hunter decks. Y'all know I'm going to be trying to make all these decks really, really good. But if I had to pick one, maybe even, you know, I think if I could figure it out, this deck could be a problem for a lot of people. It's really, really strong. It just takes a lot of setup. You have a lot of control decks that are just going to kill whichever character you don't have another copy of, meaning that you won't get your full value on your cards. So you're going to have to manage your characters on your backline to move up to then make this Gon really, really strong. But I think that both of the Gon-centric decks are going to be doing really, really well. I think that Razor is a solid rogue tier deck that is going to, you know, people who pilot this really well, like the Hashiras and stuff like that, will have a good time with this deck because it does something different that a lot of other decks don't do, and you cannot sleep on Razor. I think that both of the specified slot decks are really good now and really, really consistent. And, you know, to point out one card, this Gon in the blue specified slot deck does kind of give you the same vibes as the Three Ladies in Red and the Esper Sisters deck. If you're looking for a deck that does similar things like that, then Gon, you know, specified slot deck, this guy lets you play your next specified slot AP card for free, and then when he's sidelined, he lets you get a card back. The couple games I got to play with this, I was very surprised at how well this deck performed, and I am looking forward to it in the future, maybe being a super consistent low kind of ish deck that, you know, is probably a mix between like Historia and the Esper Sisters with the way it works. I do think that Blue Planet does a lot for Blue Bomber. I would love to see a lot of these Blue Bomber decks come back up from control. And, you know, y'all know I love Kurapika. I'll end the video with Kurapika talking about Kurapika. I will find a way to make Kurapika good. And I was sleeping on this particular card here. It is really, really strong. It's another 4-drop for the deck. If you are also a Kurapika fan, trust me, play this card at 2 to 3 copies in your deck, and you will be very surprised with how awesome this when attacking effect, if you have 6 or more energy generation, you draw a card, is for you in the early game, because you'll be stuck on the 6 energy, and in a lot of instances in Kurapika that just isn't enough for you. But this card lets you draw value from that to see the big Kurapika more often. And even with your kill spell now, this Kurapika feels really good to put Emperor Time on him. You can just put the Emperor Time, he can swing, you don't get the impact, but you do get the snipe. You will get to draw a card, and then Emperor Time will let you draw another card, so that's 2 draws there to let you get into the Kurapika, which will then be your in-game same thing, just like the Emperor Time. And it also says you can trash 1 card from your hand to make this generate the energy on the front line, which then lets you get into your Kurapika. I was sleeping on this card. I think it's really powerful. I think that Kurapika maybe can find a chance to come back in Rogue tier. But I know that was a lot. I was trying to give you guys all my thoughts on everything to happen in the meta, what is going on. And I think that at the end of the day, to close this video out, we should be very happy about the card game. It is in such a good spot, seeing so many decks be viable, and I do think that Union Arena does have the best meta state of a game in any card game that I play, and I play all of them. If you're looking for a great card game to play, share this with your friends, get more people playing into it. You know, be on the lookout for the regionals that are coming up. Try to sign up for it if you can. I'll try to make it out to one. But I appreciate all of y'all hanging out with me to the end of the video here. I know I had a lot to say, but the game had a lot going on this weekend, and I wanted to give y'all a little bit more than just, here's this, blah blah blah, split it all out, give y'all my thoughts on it. But please let me know that you guys like these kind of videos. Please like the video, you know, subscribe to the channel, leave comments down below what y'all think about the meta, what y'all think about this video, what y'all foresee doing very well in the meta. I think that we're going to see a very Kenshin oriented and Roy Mustang meta is going to be the top 2 decks. If I had to take a hot take there, those would be the top 2 decks I think in the next big tournament. But I appreciate y'all hanging with me today. Like I said, leave the video some love, subscribe to the channel. Peace.